Good afternoon. I'm Chris Levan, Energy Solutions Manager with Shadler Yesco. Welcome to today's Webinar Wednesday on the Lutron Vibe Lighting Control System. Your cameras and microphones are turned off to keep things running smoothly. Please post any questions in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. This training will be recorded and posted online for future viewing. I will now turn things over to Neil Schroeder, who will be your host. It's all yours,
Thank,
Neil.
thank you, Chris. I appreciate that introduction. My name is Neil Schroeder. I am the local Lutron rep. I work for Synergy Electrical Sales, and we want to first off thank the Shadler team for putting together this webinar, and also for you, customers, for joining us today. And for those of you that have used Vive wireless lighting controls in the past, I hope this counts as sort of a good refresher of the system. And for those of you that have not been introduced to Vive, I hope that we can show you some really good value propositions on why we believe this is a great system for your projects and facilities. So Vive is a wireless lighting control system designed specifically for commercial buildings. And really the goal here is to help increase revenue for contractors and also make installation times a lot smoother and faster through the construction process, whether it be a retrofit or a new construction project that you're working on. And we're going to go through just 5 easy steps on how to design a Vive lighting control system. So first off, let's just talk about Vive and where does it add value. First off, you're going to be able to install Vive up to 70% faster than a traditional lighting control system. And you can watch here in the video, the one guy on the right completes the installation almost 60 minutes faster or 50 minutes faster than the traditional wired installation on the left-hand side. You can also, like I mentioned, you can use Vive for both commercial and retrofit projects, and you'll find that Vive is made up of just a very few components compared to your normal network lighting control systems that you find out there. But you can do a lot with it. So that adds a lot of flexibility without adding a lot of complexity. Also, Shadler stocks a lot of these products, so you can go to your local either outside salesperson or counter person, and you can find the bulk of the product that we'll go over today already in stock, available for you. And if it's not there, Lutron does have very competitive lead times right now for the industry. And finally, the last value, and I think what most people really appreciate about using Vive, is that it gets you over those gotchas that come up in a job site or in your existing buildings, where you just need to get a control somewhere, and pulling wires to that is going to be impossible or very difficult. And Vive solves a lot of those issues. As just a little background here on wireless controls, Lutron actually introduced wireless controls to the industry. They're probably the forerunner for wireless lighting controls, and that was back in 1996, which is actually a couple of years before Wi-Fi even came out. So we're talking a long time ago, and they've been doing wireless lighting controls since then. They have very specific patents that allow them to be competitive in the market. 7 different patents that came out of that kind of initial push into wireless. And currently, across the country, we have millions and millions of wireless devices installed and millions of systems that have been operational for quite a long time. So there's a lot of expertise and history here. This isn't something new to the market. This really is a robust and well thought out and kind of well-rounded out product category for Lutron. So let's jump into it. So a Vive system, we're going to go through 5 simple steps, and you'll see as we go through this that there's really not a lot that you have to know in order to design a lighting control system with Vive. So the first is we have to have something that's controlling the actual lights in the space. This is really the only wired component that we have in the Vive system. So these are power packs that are going to go generally onto a junction box and either provide dimming or switching of your lighting load. And that's really kind of the first selection you have to make is, do I need to switch or do I need to dim? And that will let you identify which power pack or room controller that you need for your project. And in the dimming side, there's a couple of different flavors. For those of you that have, dimmed lights before, we have 0 to 10 volt dimming. We also have phase dimming, which would be for like screw-in lamps or maybe track lighting, maybe some decorative pendants. And we can also control emergency lighting. Not a lot of people take advantage of that, but being able to control those emergency lights, especially in conference rooms or training rooms where having that one night light that's stuck on at 100% the whole time really is inconvenient. We can now do that. We can do it safely, and we can ensure that that light triggers back on to 100% if you lose power in that space. So that's number one. We have to choose the power pack, and are we going to dim or are we going to switch? Going from there, once we have that selected and we know how we're going to control our lights, the next piece is, here's an example of how the power pack mounts actually above the ceiling. And the bulk of your installations will be this. The power pack will be mounted onto a junction box or onto the fixture itself above the ceiling. Again, we're eliminating all those wires that may need to run down the wall to a back box to a switch location. So talking about a switch, the next piece is selecting what our manual control is going to be. So if you just envision a room, I have a device that's going to control the lights. The next thing is I need to manually be able to turn those lights on and off. And this is going to be in 99% of the applications, you're going to have some sort of wall switch or wall control. These controls are completely wireless to the power pack. So they communicate back to this device, back to this device wirelessly. We don't have to run any wires between the wall station and the power pack. And again, just like the power packs have a couple of different flavors, depending on if you're switching or dimming, the wall stations also have a couple of different flavors. So we have an on-off button if you're just going to switch lights on and off. We also have a scene button. So if you have a conference room or an area where you want to be able to recall different lighting levels based on the task that's being performed in that space, the scene button works well in those areas. And then we have just your regular dimming, which is going to give you an on-off and a raise lower, or an on-off, raise lower, and then a favorite button. So again, a couple of different flavors there, really kind of delineated between are we dimming or are we switching. And those can be mounted on the wall, as you see in the video there. You don't have to mount a back box. There's no conduit that needs to be installed. Those can literally be mounted to any kind of surface. We've put them on marble surfaces before. We put them on drywall, obviously, on block wall. So in a retrofit application, these wall controls can be put just about anywhere you can imagine. We don't put them in metal enclosures. That's probably the one caveat to all of that. But I've put them on just about any other surface you can think of. We can also mount them to podiums, but they can also be mounted on a pedestal. So Lutron has a little pedestal that works great sitting on your desk, and you'll see that down in the bottom right. There's a pedestal there, and the Pico, as we call it, the controller can mount right there, and it'd be a great way to control your lights from your desk location. All right, so number one was choosing the power pack, the load controller. Number two is choosing our manual controls, how we're going to control those lights manually in the space. Number three, do we need to add occupancy or not? So this really is going to be kind of space dependent. A lot of times we will add occupancy. Energy code kind of requires an automatic off anyway, and occupancy tends to manage that best in most applications. There are some spaces where we wouldn't add occupancy sensors. So that's kind of why this is further down the list. But if you need to add an occupancy sensor, then we have, again, a couple of different ways to do that. Generally, we're going to add a ceiling mount occupancy sensor. And again, all these devices communicate wirelessly back to that initial load controller, that power pack that we installed above the ceiling. We also have wall-mounted occupancy sensors. One is 180-degree field of view. One is a corner mount, which is only 90-degree field of view. And then the hall sensor is designed specifically as a very narrow field of view, but very deep into the space. So we can generally look about 150 feet down a corridor with the hallway sensor. So where you have spaces maybe education would be a good example of this, or even healthcare, where you have long corridors and you want to be able to pick up people in a space. You could either do a bunch of ceiling mount sensors, or you can use one hallway sensor and help economize on some of the costs. So occupancy sensor is next. And 1, 2, and 3, power pack, wall station, and occupancy sensor really cover, a lot of the space types that you're going to get into and you're going to need to control. The next two steps that we talk about really become very space dependent and also feature dependent. So right now, with that power pack in what we call a standalone application, where I have a power pack, a wall station, and occupancy sensor, I can dim that light up and down. I can use the occupancy sensor to turn lights on and off based on occupancy. And I can even set occupancy to turn on to a level other than 100% if I want to. But I can't do daylight harvesting yet. So that's going to be the next piece is, do I have perimeter windows that provide a lot of natural light into the space? And if I do, one, does energy code require me to dim the lights based on daylight harvesting? And that is really kind of dependent upon the load that's near the window. Or as an end user, do I want to take advantage of energy savings that comes along with doing daylight harvesting? And the daylight sensor, there's only one of these, is basically going to measure the amount of natural light in the space, and we're going to dim the artificial lights accordingly, so that you can achieve energy savings, and it also help extend the life of predominantly your LED fixtures that are installed in the space. Daylight sensors typically going to be mounted anywhere from 1 to 2 window heights away from a window, and just going to be tied to power packs or load controllers that are controlling lights along those perimeter windows. We generally don't want to use a daylight sensor to control power packs that are deeper into the space. We just want to take advantage of that natural light that's coming into that room right there along those perimeter windows. And we can set different thresholds on how that works. And then finally, so now if you think of our room scenario, we have a power pack that's controlling the lights. We have a wall station that allows me to manually control those lights. We have an occupancy sensor that's going to turn lights on and off based on occupancy. And then if I have a perimeter window, I have a daylight sensor that's going to dim those lights as natural light, as the sunlight comes into the space. The fifth component that we have to consider here is, do I need to add any additional intelligence to this system? In other words, do I need a time clock? So the power pack inherently does not have a time clock native to its programming. If I need that feature, I can add what's called a Vive hub, and that's what you're seeing here in this picture. Vive hub covers about 10,000 square feet, up to 700 devices. So I don't need one per room. This is for large areas, and allows me to time clock both time of day and astronomic time clock. I can use this to control exterior lighting, for example. Or if I want to enable and disable occupancy sensors during parts of the day, I can also do that. It can also monitor energy and also do load shedding. Not a lot of our customers take advantage of load shedding here in this part of the country, but if you want, you can tie this into a load shedding event off of your building management system, and you can trigger lights to dim down or even turn off based on that load shedding being enabled or disabled. It's also going to provide some alerts for you if you lose a device. So say a battery dies in a device, or an occupancy sensor goes missing, or something happens to a wall station and maybe it gets damaged. It's going to alert you that we've lost communication to that device and we haven't seen it. The other nice feature is it's going to allow all this other integration into third-party systems, such as a building management system. And through BACnet, we can now send data to a building management system, such as occupied, unoccupied status of a room. And now in your mechanical side, you can start to throttle back your temperature controls based on if the space is occupied or not. I can also tie it into audiovisual. So an auditorium maybe at a higher education or a conference room or training room, like we've mentioned in the past, I can now tie that into a touch screen so that whenever I trigger my presentation mode, I can have the lights correspondingly dim or change based on whatever's occurring in that space. So the Vive Hub allows for integration with third-party devices. It also allows for a very simple setup of the system. So instead of a manual programming of the system using button level programming, so I would press and hold buttons on a power pack and press and hold buttons on my wall station to program the two or pair the two devices together. The Vive Hub allows me to program via an app on my smart device, either a tablet or a smartphone. And also allows me to upload that programming data to the cloud so that it's stored, so that in the future, if something happens to my Vive Hub, my kind of centralized head end, if you will, I can download that programmed information into a new one, and I don't have to go back through and reprogram all of my devices. The Vive Hub also allows us to add some software features that Lutron provides as well. If you need some more advanced energy data, or you need space utilization data over time, and if you want to kind of aggregate a larger building together across multiple Vive hubs. So this is why we would add a Vive hub would be for this intelligence, ease of programming, ease of maintenance, ease of use, those types of things. All right, so if we look at just a typical office here, we've got our power pack in the ceiling. We have our wall station, which is going to allow us to dim the lights up and down manually. We have our sensors, both our occupancy sensor and our daylight sensor installed. And then you can either manually program these together, or you can use the app via the Vive Hub if we want to add the Vive Hub there. Now, on the programming side, the Lutron did really, I think, the industry a great service here in that they've allowed this software to be accessible by anybody that really needs it. So as an end user, as a contractor, you can actually go out and program these systems yourselves. You don't have to have factory startup. Lutron provides that as a service if you want to take advantage of it. But for those electrical contractors on the call, you really can take ownership of this entire project and do all the programming yourself. You don't have to have a tech come out and do the setup. You can do it yourself out of the box with the app, and it's very, very simple. And we have a lot of electrical contractors here in Eastern Pennsylvania that take advantage of that. Some even do prefabrication, where they'll take all the parts and pieces, they'll plug them in their shop, in their fab shop, get them all programmed, ship them out to the field, and as those devices get installed, they just start to work. And so that saves a lot of time on a project as well. Not to mention you're not pulling all the low voltage wires for communication. You're not even having to program, so you can get everything installed and walk off the job, which is very, very nice. So as a wrap up here, our goal is to help you, both as end users and as electrical contractors, to work smarter, not harder. We're going to cut down that install time significantly. We're going to allow you to work in both new construction and retrofit projects. And we're going to kind of get you through all those gotchas that might occur on a project where you find out, I just can't quite get a wire to where I need it to go. Again, walking through this, you can see there's not a lot of parts and pieces that you have to be familiar with. It's the power pack, the wall station, the aux sensor, the daylight sensor, and do I need intelligence? That's it. It's very, very simple. And Lutron has a long, long history of wireless controls in the market space, being used reliably across a lot of different industries. And finally, Lutron does have 24-hour tech support. And you call in, you get a real person that has these components actually sitting right in front of them wired up, and they can try to replicate maybe an issue that you may be finding. And this is both from an installation standpoint and from an ongoing maintenance standpoint. That 24-hour tech support hotline is invaluable, and you can call them anytime, and they'll walk you through how to troubleshoot that system. And on that note, I will say Shaler Yesko actually has a very deep knowledge with Vive. Chris Levan, who introduced this whole presentation, knows Vive very well, and they have a whole team, and they're happy to do layouts for you. So if you get into a project where you need some design help, Chris and his guys can absolutely do that. They can either go on site and walk the space with you, or we have some software that we can use to design it based on floor plans. So please take advantage of that. That service is there for you, and as Synergy, we're here to support those guys in everything that they do as well. So before I go any further, I do want to mention this. Lutron Vive has been listed as a DLC qualified product, which means you can go and get rebate money from the utility as you install this. So please keep that in mind, especially if you're going into, and there are rebates for both new construction and retrofit, but as you're going into some of those projects, if you're an end user and you're looking at installing controls, maybe to gain some extra energy savings on your campus or in your buildings, or just for comfort for the occupants in the space, let's talk, and we can get PP&L or your local utility involved and see if there's some rebate money there for you. So before I hit my last couple of slides, I just want to see, are there any questions we need to address, Chris or Rob?
I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to voice their question, now's a good time. All right, I will take that as we do not have any questions.
Okay, then I want to hit these last two slides here real quick, because these are questions that generally come up whenever we're talking about wireless lighting controls. So all of our wireless devices, meaning the wall stations, the occupancy sensor, and the daylight sensor, they do have batteries in them. And those batteries have been tested by a third party and verified to have a 10-year battery life. So, you can rest assured whenever you install these, you're not going to have to change batteries after 6 months. And they're standard off-the-shelf batteries, so that, you're not buying custom batteries, and you're not having to change them frequently. So a 10-year battery life is fairly good and decent in the industry. The other thing is you don't lose programming whenever you change batteries. So even if a battery were to fail in the field, let's say they just somehow get missed and a battery fails, the system is going to remember all the programming. So once that battery is replaced and that device comes back online, all the programming is going to be there. I don't have to reprogram anything. So there's a really, really nice feature. Lutron has a really good white paper for battery life, and how they go through and how it was tested and how they kind of prove out that they can guarantee a 10-year battery life for our different wireless devices. The other question is, obviously, whenever you start talking wireless, people, get a little concerned, especially in sensitive areas like maybe financial institutions and/or healthcare, about data. And is there any sort of exposure of my data to anybody? Does this communicate on Wi-Fi? Do I have to tie it into my network? The answer is no. We don't have to tie into anybody's network. Lutron's wireless technology actually communicates on a frequency band that's very different and far removed from your typical Wi-Fi frequencies. It operates on 434 megahertz, which is a specific band that's regulated by the FCC, and is very, very secure. So you don't have to worry about people using some sort of wireless device to hack into your lighting control system. So we've eliminated that potential. In the circumstances where I do have my Vive hub and I have that integration piece, and I've tied it into a wired network, the Vive hub does not allow information to pass back into a network. It only allows you to communicate to the devices that are talking to it wirelessly on Lutron's wireless RF protocols. So you don't have to worry about someone wirelessly getting into the hub and then getting to your data. The only way to communicate between hubs would be if you're physically on that network, like you're plugged in with a Cat6 cable onto that network. So you have to have physical access to the network. And most customers that have networks that are sensitive already have barriers in place, so that physical access is not possible for people that have malicious intent. So I just want to kind of give you that's a very secure network, and Lutron's actually gone through third-party verification with this IOXT certification that kind of guarantees that this is not a security risk for data breaches and things of that nature. And like we said there, you don't have to have this on an open network. In other words, Vive does not need to talk to the internet in order for it to operate properly. It doesn't even have to be connected to a network in order for it to operate properly and for you to have all the features that we're discussing.
Hey, Neil, we did have one question come through.
Okay.
Can the Vive hub integrate with fire alarm systems?
Yes, great question. Yes, we can. We can integrate with fire alarm via contact closure. So we would have some device that is either monitoring a contact closure, or if your fire alarm system has a contact closure output on it, we can take that straight into the back of the Vive hub, and we can trigger light levels based on a closer open, and we can set that up as normally open, normally closed, maintain typically contact closures. So we can monitor that and trigger lights based on the fire alarm being triggered. Yep, great question. Thank you. Anything else? Looks like we're right at 1 o'clock almost here. So, Chris, I'll hand it back to you. Thank you for everybody for your time, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Shadler team, and they'll be happy to answer them for you. All right.
All right. Thank you, Neil. Thanks to everyone who attended today. If you would like more information on this topic or have additional questions, please reach out to your sales rep, or you can email us at info@sydist.com. Have a great day. Thanks.